Pretty cool camera.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, Nita. Hi. I'm Linda Cass. I'm owner of Gramercy Books. Thank you so much for being here with
Hi,
us.
Linda.
You can't, as I mentioned to you in email, not everyone, you can't see everyone, but we can see you because we're kind of, some people are beyond the camera. I want to introduce you to Andrew Walsh-Huggins, who's done a marvelous job moderating this discussion. We've had a great fun talk about your book, and he's going to talk to you now.
How fabulous. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. We really appreciate it. It's a real honor. And congratulations on the mystery guest.
Thank you.
So just to get us rolling here, I wanted to ask, so given the success of The Maid, and it came out with great popularity, huge bestseller. So what was the challenge in writing the sequel? And as you were working on The Maid, did you have something in mind that turned into the mystery guest?
So, no, I did not. I did not plan a sequel at all. That was the farthest thing from my mind. But a few months into the publication of The Maid, my publishers were calling me, and I was getting a lot of fan mail. And all of you readers were saying the same thing. We want more Molly. And I started to listen to that. It's like, okay. But the question for me as her creator was, how do I give you more without giving you less? And what if I can't do it? So, I tentatively told my publishers, I'm going to give this a good try. I'm going to think about it and see if there's more, narrative tapestry to explore. And then something really crazy happened. I went to the UK. I was still on tour at this point for The Maid. And I was visiting this little museum outside of Brighton in a town called Lewes. And it's a 17th century castle with a museum dedicated to the castle attached. And I came across the most unusual display in the castle. And it included the mummified body of a rat and a single silver spoon in a display case. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And I read the little caption below the case. And it tells me that in the 17th century, a maid used to work in the castle, and she was unceremoniously let go after having been accused of stealing a piece of silverware. And then many years later, when they were renovating the castle, they opened it up. In the walls, they found a rat's nest. And in the rat's nest was this rat and that missing silver spoon that she had been, this anonymous maid had been accused of stealing. And somehow that hit me like a lightning bolt. It was like this bolt out of the blue, and I could see a whole world ahead of me where we would go back in time and we would explore Molly's past, and it would take us into a kind of different dark fairy tale for adults that would explore the nature of the difficulties of being a maid and the great trials and tribulations of Gran's life, as she tried to protect Molly and do a job and get paid for it.
Wonderful. So we have so many questions for you, but I'm going to jump to one that we are having a great discussion about, and that is, where in your mind is this series set, and in what time? Some people we were all over the place. Somebody thought it was New York City. Somebody thought it was London. My feeling is it's sort of a little bit outside of time and a little bit outside of place, although it's been pointed out there's two clues. There's reference to dollars being spent, and there's references to Olive Garden.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, if you know, where is this set?
Well, it's actually one of my very favorite questions. And, readers come up to me and ask me all the time, like, where is this book set? And my question back to them is, where do you think it's set? And, I'll have people tell me exactly what you just did. Oh, I was pretty sure it was the Waldorf Astoria in New York, or, it was the Baglioni in London. And I say, yes. And the next reader who comes up saying it was Boston, I've been to that hotel, I say, absolutely. And the one who thought it was Hawaii, I'm fine with that too. And, it sounds cagey, but my goal with this book was not to create a concrete world. It was, as you've suggested, Andrew, to create a hyper real one where the reader could come in and co-create with me. I don't actually consider myself a solo creator. I write, I put a story down on the page, and then your job as readers is to finish it for me. And I wanted you to bring in your experiences of characters, of hotels, of places you've visited in the past. Bring that to the fore, use your imagination, and with just a bare sketch, the bare minimum that I give you, to complete the picture for me. So I always consider it a very high compliment when somebody says, I know where this was set. This is what I think it is. And I agree, there are contradictory clues everywhere on purpose. There is crumpets and tea, there are dollars, there's the Olive Garden. It could be basically anywhere. And if that wasn't offensive to you, then excellent.
That's wonderful. Okay, so apologize for this classic question, but can you talk a little bit about your early process? Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? And for those who might not know, a pantser is someone who basically does not plot their novel, but simply starts writing and waits to see what happens. So plotter, pantser, something in between?
Yeah, I consider myself a plantser.
Nice.
So, I love having a few stepping stones that I can see. I know this plot point, I know that one at the end, but I don't know much in between. And there's sort of a magic chemistry for me as a writer, and every writer is different, that happens between the knowing and the not knowing. If I know where I'm going, then there's the great mystery, the joy, and the frustration of figuring out step by step how I'm going to get there. So when I began The Maid, I knew a few things. I knew, the big twists, I'll say 2 of them at the end, I knew in advance, but I knew nothing else. I didn't even know the cast at that point. So that was a long exploration of asking a lot of questions and coming up with answers on the page to discover how I would earn the right to those twists at the end.
With the mystery guest, did you feel any pressure to know a little bit more, have a few more stepping stones?
Well, you have to have fidelity to what you've already written. So in some ways, it's like being bound in a nutshell, and yet you have to consider yourself the king of infinite space in there. But oh my goodness, sometimes it gets really tight, right? Because you've already created a world and characters and they've had a past, and you have to discover new terrain while being faithful to the terrain that you've already built. So it's actually quite challenging on the one hand. On the other hand, there's a great gift of already knowing your characters. So that sort of exploration is, you've got that well in hand in a series book if you've written one already.
Nice. As a follow-up, can you talk a little bit about the mechanics of your process? Are you a morning person, an evening person? Do you write in the same place? Can you walk us through a little bit of that?
Sure. I have trained myself to get up very early in the morning. I have only recently given up an entire second career, which I've had for 20 years as an editor. So I've been working in books for a very long time, but on the other side, as an editor, helping writers pen their novels. And so, I trained myself for the last few years to get up at 5 in the morning, work on my own work first, and then at 9 a.m. begin my day job. However, now I'm writing full time and only, and I don't have a job in publishing. And so I'm sort of, almost rediscovering a new routine. And it has more liberty to read actual books instead of manuscripts, which is the most exciting thing. The other thing I would say about my process is, I have a few weird rituals, and I think a lot of writers do. I call the room that I write in, my cave, my writer's cave. And when I think about it, it's not actually a room, it's a sweatshirt. My writer's cave can actually be anywhere, as long as I have this disgusting old hoodie that I can put over my head and contain myself in. And when my hands hit that keyboard, it's as though I'm in this own private space of discovery and imagination where it's my job to create on the page.
Yeah, wonderful. Can you, congratulations on down to one job at the moment. Can you talk a little, you've talked about having a sort of dual life as an editor and a writer. And even though you're now a full-time writer, can you talk about how being an editor affected your writing and maybe vice versa?
I owe my authors just the biggest debt of gratitude. I have only ever been good at one thing, telling stories and helping other people tell stories. And for the last 20 years, I have helped other people tell their stories. And that has been the best writer's school I could have ever imagined. I mean, it's incredible. And I now have a facility with narrative that allows me to write relatively fast or comparatively fast. And that is the great gift of working under deadlines with so many writers at the same time. You know, that is the greatest gift. And I owe it to the wonderful, wonderful writers over many years who have allowed me into their worlds.
Wonderful. So many of us were talking earlier about Molly and her, Molly as a character. I know, if I have this right, that she sort of sprang to life in a hotel room in London when you surprised a maid, I think if I have this right, who was cleaning, and you startled each other. And can you talk about Molly's personality? You know, we hear the word neurodivergent thrown around a lot. She's also just has a very strong personality. Help us understand how you created her. Take us from that moment in that room in London.
Yeah, well, as you say, I was at the London Book Fair, which is an event that happens every year in London, where agents and publishers gather. We talk about books, we buy things, we buy manuscripts, and so on. And I was out for a meeting, and I came back and startled the roommate who was cleaning the room. And you know, I remember looking at her and thinking, "Oh my God, it is such an invisible and intimate job being a roommate." She'd been cleaning my room for days. She knew everything about me. And I knew nothing about her, you know? And it was just one of those little fragmentary moments that, you know, happens and then it's gone. But then days later, I started to hear a voice in my head as I was taking my plane ride home to Toronto. And it wasn't my voice, it was Molly's, and it was clean, it was crisp, it was very precise. And I just started to write what I was hearing on a napkin from under my drink because I didn't have any paper. And that turned out to be the prologue for The Maid. So that was really the inception point for writing a novel, but I never considered, really, not very seriously anyhow, writing a novel until I got that idea. And at that point, I'm like, that is an idea I'm going to pursue. I'm just going to privately, quietly see if I can build this out from the beginnings and the nascency of a story right to its close.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story how seeing something, just a momentary thing, almost like a little seed sprouted immediately.
Yeah, and I think that's how it is for a lot of creatives. You don't know what's going to cause the inspiration, but there's a moment where, you know, the gift of the gods, as I call it, descends upon you in this little fragment moment that you could never have, you know, known in advance, and somehow it moves you to create.
Another process question, if I may. You know, the books flow so well. What's your revision process like? And do you prefer, I mean, are you happiest when you type the end on the first draft, or when you dive into the revisions, and how does that work for you?
I love being done a first draft. Of course, the terror sets in the moment you're done, because just because you're done doesn't mean you're done. And just because you're done doesn't mean your publishers like it, or your agent likes it, or anyone else does. It doesn't mean it's good. It's just done, you know? And that is, though, a pleasing feeling for sure, to be finished, especially when, you know, it takes a long time. Even if you are fast, it takes a long, long time and a lot of mental and emotional and psychological energy to put a singular draft to paper. Once that's done, it's, you know, it's a long process of listening, really, to the great readers around me, and most importantly, my editors, for all of my blind spots. And that is the other thing that I learned about changing roles from editor to writer, is as a writer, I feel so blind. When I was an editor, I knew exactly how to help an author. I knew how to fix this story. If I didn't, why on earth would I acquire the manuscript? So, but I don't feel that as a writer. I feel so blind and unsure of myself. And I need the feedback of my very trusted readers, my agent, my editors, in order to help me volume set. You know, is this volume right for this moment, for this character, this scene, or not enough? What have I missed? Are the clues clear? All of those questions that have to be asked about every single moment, every single character, every single scene. And then that hard nitpicky work, which to me is an easier process than the first, begins.
Fantastic. We're going to open up here in a second, but the next obvious question is, two-parter, can you talk about what you're working on next? Will Molly return? And then the question everybody here has is, okay, is she going to become a police detective or stay a maid?
Yes, so I can answer all of that. So, and I also realized I didn't quite answer your neurodivergent question, so I'll come back to that after. I can tell you there will be more Molly. So I've recently finished a draft of a novella that will come out this October this year. And it is a holiday story. So it's right before the holidays. And Molly has a new mystery to solve because Juan Manuel isn't quite acting himself. He's been really off. You know, he's sleeping a lot. He's tired all the time. And his comings and goings, well, they can't be explained, which is perplexing to Molly. And she wonders, has she done it again? Has she chosen a frog instead of a prince? As it turns out, and as you may have guessed, you, the sleuths, the readers yourself, might be hearing more than jingle bells in the background of this little mystery. And as Molly comes to realize, she's about to get the greatest gift of her life. So that comes out this fall. It's a tiny little gifty book. It is not meaty, it's smaller. And then I'll have one large encompassing final book that will come out the year after that will close the series off.
Final book, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And will Molly become a detective? Maybe, or maybe not. I don't know. Actually, I do know. That I actually do know. You know, she could. It is possible. But maybe there are some surprises in store.
Yeah, we look forward to them. Yeah, I'll let you go back real quick to the neurodivergency issue and just anything you want to say about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's no doubt that you would have noticed that Molly is a unique and peculiar character in a lot of ways. She has her own way of seeing the world, her own way of interpreting social cues and reactions around her, and she finds that world incredibly challenging. I, however, never in the book or in the copy or anywhere else label her in any way. And that was a choice that I made, and a choice that I made very early on. My goal is to have readers sit with Molly and be her, to live behind her eyes, to experience life in her skin with her unique way of seeing the world, her vantage point. And my hope was that instead of seeing her as other or as just a label, and nobody is ever just a label, nobody is ever just, you know, a diagnosis from a DSM manual. We are all bigger than that. Our personalities encompass so much more than that. I wanted the reader to just become her, and hopefully, if I did my job right, to live as Molly for a little while is to love her.
Wonderful. So everybody can hear me. Does anybody have any question for Nita? And I'm told if you just speak up, she should be able to hear you.
I have a question. So you said that you hadn't intended to write the book. You had your moment of inspiration, and then you hadn't intended to write the second book. So like, I guess it's a two-part question, but are the books that you've edited for 20 years, are they in this genre? Are they mystery, and what do you, do you always want to write mystery, or do you have other ideas? Like, what genre would you hop to if you could?
Right. So as an editor, I've done a bit of everything, you know. I did a lot of genre books, so a lot of commercial fiction, mysteries, thrillers for sure. Generational fiction, what we used to call women's fiction, but you know, it's quite a problematic label for all kinds of reasons. So yeah, I did work in that space. I have written 2 mysteries, but I don't consider myself a mystery writer at all. You know, I think of mystery as a container. It's just, you know, it's a container you put writing in and it's going dish. But that doesn't mean that the container is the dish. They're 2 different things. So for me, mystery has a very powerful dramatic narrative engine, and that's why I chose it for this particular story and this character. But I can completely imagine writing outside of mystery in the future. I love what I call Frankenstein books, and I bet some of the readers out there might be a little bit the same as me. And what I mean by that are books that blend 2 genres together, you know? So I think of my first book, The Maid, as a classic Agatha Christie style murder mystery on the one hand, but it's also feel-good fiction on the other, or what the Brits love to call uplifting literature, you know? So it's these 2 things with a voice-driven character, and you put all that together and there you have the dish. And, you know, the second book, yes, primarily it's a mystery, but it's also kind of fairy tale for adults. You know, that's the secondary genre that we have at play in the second book. So who knows what I'll do in the future? I have a feeling my characters will remain the same because I don't know, it just seems quintessential to who I am and to my voice that they will always be sort of outsiders, sort of a little bit outcast, and that will be one of the mechanics working in the background as a character trope. But I don't know. We'll see what I do next. I don't know.
Thank you.
I guess with that goes without saying that after sounds like you are going to draw Molly's literary career to a close. Hopefully there will be other books after that, though.
Yeah, I do plan to, and I can feel way back there in some back part of my brain. I can feel some things stewing and brewing. But you know, I don't have time to devote to those thoughts right now because I still have to, you know, complete this narrative world.
Yeah, great.
I have a question. Is there a meaning or a mythological meaning behind any of the names, or is it an old boyfriend, or how did you come up with the names of the characters in your books?
You know, I think naming conventions is just, it's so much fun to play with. And in The Maid, you may have noticed that a lot of characters have names with colors in them. Molly Gray is Molly Gray. Mr. Black is Mr. Black. He's a rather evil figure. Molly is gray because she's going on a journey of growth from black and white to understanding, you know, the true subtleties of something in between. And there are other characters too, Mr. Snow. You know, there are odes to color. And, you know, as I mentioned, I wanted that Agatha Christie classic mystery storytelling style, but I wanted to layer it with a kind of playfulness related to that old board game some of you may have played many, many years ago, Clue. Do you remember that game?
Oh, I love it. Yes.
So, you know, I love the convention of there's a character, there's a room, there's a weapon. And if that isn't an ode to the whodunit, I don't know what there is. And so, you know, I played with color the same way we play that game. Is it Mrs. Peacock in the ballroom with the wrench and so on? And I really wanted that playfulness, that sense of whimsy to come through in the naming conventions of the first book and even the second.
Thank you. So, yeah, please.
When you have a character and these characters have personalities and you try to contain them, I mean, or, you know, follow them through in a normal life sequence of events. I think back in terms of people I have met in my many years. You know, I'm 79, so I've seen a couple of people. She has a very sort of unique personality, and it makes me wonder, okay, have you met people with sort of this, I don't know, borderline spectrum disorder kind of thing to help shape you, shape your thought processes into creating an individual like this?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Many, many years ago, before I was an editor, I worked as a teacher and I taught special needs teenagers. And they taught me more than I ever taught them. And one of the things we would do would be to like go on field trips. And when I say field trips, I mean that very, very loosely. If we had been in Ohio, I'm sure we would have come to Gramercy Books. And we would have, snooted around in there. Very often I'd take them to this donut shop across the street, and we would sit there and just have coffee and donuts. And so often this wasn't enrichment for the students. It was enrichment for everybody else. What I mean by that is these were kids who sometimes had tics. They were, they might appear odd to some people. They never appeared that way to me, but I worked with them so closely. I had a kid who used to carry newspapers with him everywhere, a stack of them. He needed to know tomorrow and yesterday and the day before, and he needed a sense of order and to carry that in his arms. I had another one who had a lot of tics, that people would notice. And when I would take them out in the world, some people would be very kind to them. And then there were the people who weren't, that showed zero understanding. And I'm talking about grown adults with very few excuses for behaving the way they did. And that experience never left me. And those kids, on the other hand, behaved with such grace and dignity in the face of abject prejudice that they experienced every single day, every time they left the safety of school or their homes. And when I was creating Molly, I wasn't conscious of it, but I think in retrospect, I took the best qualities from a whole set of students who I worked with over years, and I gave all of their best characteristics to a single character.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you.
I guess
Oh,
I,
yeah, question here.
I'm a little bit curious for the second book. Did you write all of the flashbacks at the same time or like separately from the mystery plotline of the novel?
That is such a writerly question. Only a writer would ask that, or somebody who's attempting to learn the craft. For me, I toggled back and forth, and I'm going to tell you why. The time in this novel is intricately connected, one chapter to the next. They're not really separate. They're a long continuation. And the reason for that is that in a novel that's structured the way this one is, the past represents a quest. In a book with this structure, as in life, I would argue, we move forward in the present. We try to move towards a goal. We get stymied. We have to retreat to the past, go back to it, go on a quest into it to understand something we didn't understand before, return back to the present with whatever we needed, and then we can move forward into our future. If we don't go back in the past, we'll never be moving forward. We will be in the same place in the future, in the future, in the future, in the future, always the same. And that is true of story as well, So I wanted to reflect that psychology where we are moving forward with serious, active, extrinsic momentum in the present tense. But every time we go back to the past, it's because Molly is searching for something she needs to understand about her grandmother, because only by understanding her grandmother will she actually be able to understand herself and therefore be able to solve the mystery in the present. So when you're working on a timeline that has past and present, always ask yourself, why do we go back to the past? You know, if you are a writer like that, that is a very important question to ask.
We're almost out of time. Two quick questions, one semi-serious, one a little bit more serious. Do you look at hotel rooms differently now? And have you heard from people in the service industry about Molly?
You know, I do look at hotels differently now. Let me say, I always tip the maid. Always tip the maid. Because that is one hard job, okay? Not only is it psychologically hard because you're invisible, it's also physically unbelievably demanding. And it's a job, let's be honest, mostly done by hardworking women. Tip the maid. That was the first question. What was the second?
Have you heard from people in the
Oh.
service industry, either maids or just people in the hotel business?
I would say that once every week or two, I get an email from somebody who works in hotels or was herself a maid. And I can say that, you know, it's tremendously gratifying when she, because it's almost always a she, tells me that, you know, she feels seen, that the experience of reading that book made her feel like I saw her. And I consider that a really lovely compliment. I did have one person who was a maid write to me, and she may very well have been Molly herself, to tell me that on marble floors, you would never, ever use lemon polish, and that detail should be changed.
Great. Well, Nita, thank you so much for being with us. The community here at Gramercy Books, it has been very enlightening and very fun to talk to you. And Andrew thank you, Andrew. I mean, Andrew's a crime writer and mystery writer, and he was perfect in helping us understand and go through so much of this wonderful, wonderful book. So thank you so much. And next time you have a big book and you happen to want to go to Ohio, know that you're welcome here in person.
I cannot wait. I would absolutely love that. Everyone's got to come back though.
Oh, yeah. And more, and their friends.
Excellent. Well, it's so lovely to have this time with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being readers, because you bring books to life. And I hope we meet again.
Thank you. Thank you.